Relativity.
This is Lee Shackelford, creator of Relativity, and we are in pre-production for the next 10 episodes of the series. It occurred to me that while you're waiting for those episodes to come your way, that I'd like to send you some other things, give you some other content, even if it's not part of the story. So I started wondering, wouldn't it be great to interview some fans of the show, especially if they are content creators themselves? So for the very first one, I wanted to reach out to David S. Deere, who has been such a terrific cheerleader of this show and is himself the creator of a Ninth World Journal, among other things. So I've got him on the line with me. David, are you there?
I am, yes.
Fantastic. Do people call you David? Do we call you Dave? What do we call you?
David. David works.
I can't call you Deere because I hardly know you.
So you can get away with that with my last name. That's
You've never heard that joke before either, have you? Yeah.
I always like it because I wouldn't trade my last name for anything, you know.
That's great. It does predispose people to like you, perhaps.
Yeah, you know,
nice?
I have to ride that. I have to get every advantage I can, I suppose. And so I'll take this one if I can get it.
That one. Well, in my theory is that we're going to talk about relativity a lot, but what's the quick pitch for a Ninth World Journal? How would you? What should we say about it?
It is an audio drama set a billion years in the future, and it's about a man who played with some technology that was supposed to enable him to teleport. It went sideways, and now he does teleport, but not intentionally.
Yeah, which is a great way of getting into the story. It's funny. I've been wanting to tell you this for a while, but when I was in middle school, I guess I decided what I really wanted to be was a comic book artist, comic book writer.
Oh.
And that was, I guess I've never really given that up. But I decided to sit down and write a comic book. And my hero was a guy who has built a teleportation machine, and he loses control of it, and it takes him places that he doesn't want to go.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I still have the comic, and I look at it every now and then and think, wow, is this stupid? But but the basic idea of getting into the story by having a machine that is supposed to take you someplace and it doesn't take you there,
Right.
That clearly was brilliant because it really works in a Ninth World Journal.
Oh, good.
Now, a Ninth World Journal, some of the world building is done. I don't want to say done for you, but there's some backstory about this, right? About Numenera and
Yes, that's true. Actually, a lot of the world is built. It's based on the role-playing game, the tabletop role-playing game Numenera, which is from Monty Cook Games. They're the ones who created this game. And a lot of this is from the source book, the main book, where most of the settings and the names of the places that you hear about are actually taken from the book. And they, of course, use them as kind of story seeds and story ideas, which I've done. I've taken those seeds and kind of shaped little bits and pieces of the world that he travels around in. Mm-hmm. So that's true. You're right. It actually a lot of it is kind of pre-staged in a way.
Yeah, but it's not writing your story for you any more than you could make a movie based on the encyclopedia.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at your reviews online here. So for people who haven't already looked it up, you'll see love, and an incredibly rich world dramatized. And our friend Rock says, made me feel like a kid again. And on the 5-star reviews go. So
I appreciate you sharing that. That's very kind. I really do appreciate that very, very much.
I love that we're fans of each other's shows. It's awkward to talk to people whose shows I haven't listened to.
You talk to me about it. I've listened to the whole thing twice through. So
twice.
Yes, and it won't be the last time that I listen to it.
Some kind of nut?
Yes, I am. I've been told that before. Yeah, I mean, there's so many little pieces and bits that I really wanted to kind of pull out of that story that I wanted to listen to it a second time around, and you do get those little tiny bits and pieces. So it's just as good, if not better, the second time around.
I would wonder about that. Yeah, I'm not sure I've listened to it all twice, but No, you know, as somebody who does this, we've listened to it 1,000 times
Yeah,
in tiny bits of shrapnel that we stitch
exactly, in that
together.
really rough form, as it
Yeah,
were, you know.
but oh yeah, and since we're going to talk about plot points, I should go ahead and sound my spoiler warning here.
Spoilers. 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 Spoilers.
Here
Spoilers.
we go.
Spoilers.
The other thing I wanted to make sure that I said up front is that I'm hoping to make this a series of interviews with with fans of the show and other podcast creators and with maybe with some speculation about what's going to happen in these next 10 episodes. And
Mm.
I thought maybe I should go ahead and say I've already plotted these next 10 episodes. So if somebody tosses out a great idea in these discussions, that is actually something that I'm already planning to do, I don't know what I'm going to do about that.
Oh.
Should I
Yeah.
should I just say But I also don't want people to think I'm stealing their ideas, no matter how brilliant. But the only way I can think to mitigate this, at least as far as we're concerned, is to refuse to tell anybody if they're on the right track or not, if they speculate about things. But anyway, so the eventual surprise remains intact. But there's that anyway. But I do know
Then
where all
again,
this is going.
there could also be the left field ones where you have to kind of mask going, wait a minute, how
I
far off were they on that?
Yeah, it's fun. I do have friends here in town that I see on a regular basis, and they are listeners to the show. And so every now and then, one of them will come to me and say, "I think I got it. I know what's happening." And they'll tell me, and I'll say, "Hmm." All I can do is go, "Hmm," because they are so far. They're wrong. They're so wrong.
Well, but okay, here's my thing about that is that as I have some ideas of what I think the story might be doing, or what Lee Shackelford might be doing,
Yeah.
but as you're a screenwriter, I feel like you kind of want to be one step ahead of us. You want to tell a story that's going to keep us surprised. So I'm kind of expecting I might be wrong, and kind
Mm,
of hoping I might be wrong in a way. If I'm right, I'll kind of be shocked, because I think that I think you're going to one up us, in a really, really delightful way. I mean, that's just the magic of storytelling, the beauty of storytelling, to be surprised.
yeah, now that you say that, I think isn't that what we always expect from our best storytelling? Is that if we start thinking, I know where this is going, and we're right, that I think sometimes we're disappointed.
Mm,
We're like, wow, I really wanted this screenwriter or this playwright or whatever to pull a rabbit out of their hat, and they just kind of
exactly.
didn't.
Well, but I'm
But
going to say this as a caveat. In the event that I do say something that actually might be something you figured out, I'm going to chalk it up to the great minds,
absolutely.
axiom.
Well, and you've got a master plan for Ninth World Journal too, right? You do I remember you saying this before, that you've got an endpoint in mind?
I had like several different endpoints in mind.
Yeah.
I haven't really set on anything yet. I'm kind of, but everything in between is still kind of blank slate, blank canvas. So I'm going to let the story kind of steer its way through, and then see which final destination it takes me to out of the handful that I have kind of, yeah, sketched in my head.
Yeah. No, I love that. I remember being on a writers panel many years ago with a noted novelist, and it was just me and him. And a question from the audience was, do you have to know the end of your story before you can start writing? And the novelist and I both answered at the same time. And I said yes, and he said no.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
so we had to say to the person who asked, well, there you go.
You're both right, kind
But
of thing.
but I think it sounds like you and I are doing the same thing, because this last episode, as I'm planning it for Relativity, is the is I would say 85% what I intended when I sat down to write episode one. But as things have gone along the way, little things have changed that have made me really. I realize that I'm really glad that it's taken me 3 years to do this whole series, because that's given me a lot of time to rethink stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And having that luxury is a beautiful thing to have.
yes. Now we had a long hiatus between our seasons 2 and 3, or 3 and 4 rather, And I found that kind of embarrassing, and I was afraid that a lot of people would fall away and be lost in the desert as I wandered around. But I don't know, they seem to have stuck with me. So
Well, I think with a story like this one, you've got to see it to the end. It's not one where in any point in this series, in the story, did I feel like, oh, I could bail out here. You just can't. You can't. You've got to figure out where this is going to go.
yeah, outstanding. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love a cliffhanger.
Hmm.
If that's so that's certainly been my approach, was to always make sure that the episode ends on some kind of a tune in next time.
Oh yeah, yeah. It definitely has you go. I mean, and there'll be a just specific line you ended on where I'll be like, hey, wait, what?
What?
I
Oh,
had the luxury of coming in a little bit later, so I got to binge it part of the way through, and then as I kind
mm,
of got closer to your current point, then I had to start waiting.
yeah, yeah. I remember you saying that time back when. I thought, I wonder what it would be like to listen to those first, God, what, 20 episodes as a binge? I don't know, something like that. Yeah, well, at
And it's
least.
easy to do. It flows really nicely as a binge. Not all shows do that necessarily.
Mm.
So this one definitely did.
Both of our shows, our episodes tend to be about 10, 15 minutes long, right? So
Right.
it makes them, I think it makes them digestible.
Hmm. And I will say this, when I listened to it the second time through, it didn't feel like it didn't feel like, wait a minute, because could you imagine watching a television show in 10 minutes and
Mhm.
you're saying, well, okay, the commercial chewed up like a third of that. So uh but it didn't feel like, oh, wait a minute, it's over already. It didn't feel like that. You're in the story, you're engrossed in the story, and those 10 minutes has so much in it as far as content and exchange and dialogue and dynamics that it doesn't feel like it, like, you know, came and went in the blink of an eye.
That's great.
But it
Yeah.
still is a nice digestible chunk, like you said.
Yeah. I guess I've got to figure out a way to ask this if I'm going to interview people and talk about relativity. But I don't like the sound of tell me what you like about it, but tell me what you like about it.
Okay. Oh, that's easy for me. There.
Help me come up with a better way of asking that too.
Well, you could use the word dig. Tell me what you dig.
What do you dig about this?
It's an easy answer for me because it's not just one answer. There are, I think, the characterization is great. I love the contrast of the characterization between Christopher and Sophia, because Christopher is this kind of wears his heart on his sleeve, kind of, you know, joking half the time, and he seems like the kind of guy that the more stressed he is, the more he's going to joke, and I get that. And
Yep.
she's just very much, let's just play this by the book. I'm going to keep everything close to the vest, and I don't want to give away too much of my personal self because leaves me vulnerable, and I do not like to be vulnerable. And that contrast actually, I think, helps make a good carrier or vehicle for everything else that's going on, because you find their humanity in this, and the stakes, anytime the humanity is more present in your characters, then the stakes become higher. And that's the
Mm,
case for these two. So there's that aspect. There's the sci-fi aspect that I love. I love the idea of just relativity, the weight that the name of the show carries and threads throughout the series, the episodes. And there's that mystery that's just constantly underlying things. And when you peel back one mystery and kind of see a little bit more of what's going on, it just creates another mystery behind that. It's like, you know what they say, when the more questions you get answered, the more
mm.
questions you end up unveiling. So those are a lot of the things I like about it. It's a very well told story, and the arc is. I don't ever feel like I'm like hit out of left field, but I'm always surprised,
Oh, that's
if that makes
wonderful.
sense.
Yes, it does, and I really struggle with things like that because sometimes I feel like, well, if I want to keep people surprised, I could do this. No, that's just inane. Don't don't need to come up with a surprise for surprise's sake. Let's do something that actually makes some sense. But no, well, that's very gratifying because it sounds what you're telling me is that all the things I have tried to do are working. That's,
Oh, they
I
must
mean,
be. If those are the things you tried to do,
Mm.
it's one of the reasons it's one of my favorite shows, and why I'm so enwrapped in it. And you do so with such a small cast too. And I mean, I love shows with big casts,
Hmm.
but it takes a kind of a nice delicate art to really make it work with a pretty small, because you have essentially four core characters with
Hmm.
some that kind of show up here and there.
Right.
I guess, and you could call the AI a character, I suppose, but
Several people tell me she's their favorite character, and
oh, really?
yes, I'm never
Interesting.
quite sure how to.
I think she's kind of like almost like a foil for Christopher in a way.
Oh yes, and
Yeah.
I'll tell you, just I was talking with somebody about this the other day. That is, she's generated by Amazon Polly.
Oh, really?
And one of the voices you can choose is this British girl, this little girl. And as soon as I heard that, I thought, oh, that's great. I would love it if she had this little girl voice. And I swear to God, I'm not doing this in editing. But when you just give her some dialogue to read and she reads the dialogue, it has this little flip tone to it, this kind of sass.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not doing that. That's just the AI.
Oh,
She
interesting.
My friend Kyle Jones was the first to point this out, that she pauses when I give her the word doctor as an interjection. She always pauses a little bit for it before she
Oh,
says it. So it's like, I'm not sure I can do that, doctor.
perfect. I love it.
It's
I
just,
love it.
um, yeah, I've been talking with some of the other uh, audio fiction creators on Discord and on Twitter, and we're comparing notes about how many of us have annoying AI characters in our shows that apparently we feel like that's something that that's what a Ninth World Journal needs, is an annoying AI character.
Yeah, yeah. How would I make that work? I'd have to think about
Got to
it.
be in his helmet or something.
Oh, right.
But but yeah, you talked about the size of the cast. Really, my idea at the beginning was this should be basically a phone call. It's going to be about Christopher and Sophia talking as all of these things happen. And pretty quickly, I found that I ran out of ways to do that. I thought I'd better bring in some other characters here. For if nothing else, I thought that it might be fatiguing to the audience just to listen to our voices constantly. But I say that to somebody whose fiction podcast is just one voice, and it works.
I gotta say though, I understand where you're coming from, because I'm not really sure how long or sustainable it is. So I understand why you did that. I've asked myself. I said, um, because it happened organically too. I didn't all of a sudden feel like, oh, these two just showed up or these people just showed up. It didn't feel like that.
Hmm.
But I did kind of, the
Oh,
second
good.
time listening to it, I went back and I said, can I see kind of where this happened, and then would it have changed anything without them? It expanded the story, which was nice. But I don't know that it would have been tiring for the listeners. And, of course, you can't. It's hard to say, because it's only hindsight that we're working with.
Yeah, but that's right. Yeah, you and I are both at least online friends with the creator of Moonbase Theta Out, another show that I very much admire. And to begin with, that's been one voice. And
Yes.
from what I'm understanding of his writing, the next season's going to have a whole host of characters. So
Yes.
he's going to open the gates and let all the animals loose. So
Exactly. And I did get a glimpse of something that he had created with kind of the dialogue between characters. I don't know if he's using that format in the rest of throughout the whole season, but it's kind of an interesting flip, and I do wonder how audiences. I would be curious to how the rest of your listeners responded to the introduction of the other characters,
mhm.
and it just is kind of like, okay, is this going to be a harbinger if I do something like that, and how would it be for DJ, who the creator of Moonbase Theta Out. But I think he's going to be great, because he's doing that unique kind of going back and retelling the story with the other characters from their perspectives.
Yes,
So I do think it's going to work really well in his case, and it was very seamless in yours. So it's kind of it's a risk you take.
I suppose so. It feels calculated, but Yeah, and you know, at least where one character is concerned, that was like a Christmas present. I love my Sophia, Elena Jordan. I love her so much, and I asked her at the end of one year, I said, "What can I do for you? What would you like to see happen that would make Sophia fun for you?" And she said, "She's always at work, and I know that's part of her character, but wouldn't it be great if she could go home?
Mm.
What's her life like at home?" And that's where her mother came from, is just entirely from that question, that observation. She said, "Do this for me."
The introduction of the mother was really really well done. It really, I personally felt like it lends a lot of kind of, okay, now I get it, to who Sophia is. It really
Mhm.
kind of helps you see that, because she's so guarded with it with Christopher, and to a lesser extent with oh, what's the engineer's name?
Marcus.
Marcus, thank you.
Yeah.
With Marcus, she's also, pretty guarded with him,
Yeah.
despite the way he sees her. That it's nice to see kind of that, really, where she does allow herself to be a lot more vulnerable with her mother, and it also explains why she's not as vulnerable in a lot of ways too with other people.
That's what I was hoping. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, the Shoemakers, they're made of tough stuff apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they're together, they can cry on each other and so on. Um, yeah, and that actress is my great friend Stephanie Lindsay, who is not German, and she said, "I can attempt this accent if you like. How about this?" And she just did a few sentences, and I said, "Well, that's amazing. How did you do that?" So
Yeah, she's got it dialed.
some people have that gift, and
Hmm.
some don't. So
Yeah,
um,
kudos to her. Kudos to both of them. Your whole cast is fantastic. Don't sell yourself short either, because I mean, you're highly believable, which is what every actor ascribes to.
believability is what I want. Yeah,
Right,
because I think you're exactly right. It doesn't matter how fascinating the story is if people don't care about those characters, if they don't care about the humanity of those people, then there's no point in telling the story.
right. Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think. Do I have questions for you, or are there things that you want to volunteer? Or
Well, I don't know. Do you want my theories? I guess
oh,
that's a
oh, yes, absolutely.
okay. All right, let's start with well, I think one of the biggest ones is the voices.
Mm.
That's I mean, so much is kind of like, that's that one of those, the biggest mystery of this whole thing are the voices. And I'm gonna have to be afraid of sounding like a fool here, because I'm gonna be, guessing, throwing darts at a board here. With that, I feel like it's here. Okay, I'm gonna be completely honest. I want to go metaphysical, because that's kind of where I tend to want to go. And in a science fiction story, it's almost taboo to try to go metaphysical. But
Yeah,
this feels like it's in that realm, and I'm like, if you're hard science, you're gonna really, really, torque the hard science people with, when you if you try to go metaphysical. But if you're dealing with something like relativity, where where past and future kind of start to blur, I think it really opens a lot of things up. And that whole um the line is, you must stay connected, or you must remain connected.
remain. Yeah.
You must remain connected.
Mm.
To me, it doesn't feel like it's addressing specifically Christopher or specifically Sophia. At this point, the only two I believe that hear it. I feel like it's this general message to. I think it's a general message. I don't think it's stay connected to Sophia, or stay connected to Christopher, or stay connected to the memory of the people who've since passed on. I think it's a just stay connected as human beings, or as just part of this great giant cosmos that we're part of. So that's that's it doesn't it's very very metaphysical, but I'm just kind of, that's where I am with it.
I like it. I like it. But no, I think you're right that they're for because this attempts to be hard sci-fi, even though there's a lot of fudging, of course. But yeah, if well, like I have a friend who said who told me that her theory is that it's God.
Hmm. Okay.
And I
I can
said,
see where she
you
gets
know,
that.
that's interesting. But
Mhm.
right, but in my without saying so to her, my thinking was, I know fans of the show who would come after me with pitchforks and torches if the answer in episode 50 was it was God, you
Right.
know, because you don't do the metaphysical in hard science, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. If you do it, you've got to really kind of you gotta the word quantum has to
Right.
get
Yeah.
squeezed
When
in
you're
there
talking
somewhere.
about relativity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
The God particle. I mean, that's about as
right.
far as you
Yeah.
stretch things.
That's why we
Yeah.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's fascinating though. Anything else you've got a theory about or?
I feel strongly about this one, and I'm okay with being wrong with it, but I feel
Mm.
strongly that the reason that oh geez, I wanted to say Roger, but then I'm going to Moonbase Theta out.
Peter. Yeah.
Peter, thank you.
Yeah. But
um,
I know why you're thinking Roger. Yeah.
right. Peter, my suspicion as to why he's got all those people, should I say spoiler alert here, or have you got that covered?
I've already sounded the spoiler alert. So.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll just say the reason I believe that Peter has stuffed all of these crewmates into the central um the freezing
Hmm.
central freezing chamber, the core, thank you. Into the core was because the core is this chamber for all these zygotes, obviously. And he, I believe, he wants to reinduce our beautifully flawed genetics that the crew carries rather than the ones that are already in there. And how else to get it out of them to just preserve it within them? Because granted, they die, but in theory, their sperm and eggs would freeze and still be viable enough to use at some point in a really macabre way of accessing them. But the man's lost his mind, so that's kind of my theory.
but there's still some logic to that. So yeah, if he's just nuts, he's
Yeah, it's true, because then he'd be like the
he's
Joker, chaos for chaos's sake. But he's
yeah.
got a calculated
This
plan there,
is
so not so nuts that he's not using some reasonability.
yeah. It's
Just
just
how
gonna
he's
be
getting there is a little twisted.
crazy like a fox.
Crazy like a fox, yes.
Yeah.
So that's my theory on as to why he has committed these acts.
Fascinating. Fascinating. I wonder how many people listen to that and say who are going to listen to this and say, "Huh, huh." I
Or
hadn't thought of
say,
it that way, but
that guy's nuts. No,
uh,
who would do that?
David, they'll say, no, 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 no. Listen, I'd love to
Oh,
hear
to
some other
apply a lot of
theories.
those arguments. Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are
yeah.
my those are my two big ones.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love the way you're thinking. If people want to find a Ninth World Journal, or maybe there's another project you want to talk about.
There isn't another project yet. I kind of want to see Ninth World Journal through before I start delving into. I have things in my head that I'd
Mhm.
like to delve into, but I feel like I need to be loyal to this until it reaches its conclusion, which eventually it will. And I'm just kind of feeling out what that's going to look like. So I'd like to see at least 4 or 5 seasons for this. I don't know that I will take it past the fifth season. I have a kind of theory, and actually, I should ask you about this because you've been exposed to the industry enough. I have a theory that a season, it's really challenging to really keep a season alive and engaging past the fifth, sixth, or seventh season
Hmm.
of any series. I could be way off on that, but that's my own feeling.
Well, it sure feels like it, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
There's a few shows that have managed to pull it off well, but I think
Hmm.
most of them, I think they're kind of reaching when it comes to the seventh season. And if they spring back from it, there's that seventh season dip, that seventh ending stretch, but not in a good way.
Right.
And at the ninth season, you're like, you guys go ahead. Don't be afraid to hang this up. And I don't want to get into the jump the shark phase of that. So I think 5 is kind of a nice. I think if you're doing 5, that's a great number to do. I mean, I'll miss the hell out of the show, but that's a good number. I mean, when DS9 wrapped up, I was like, oh, no, why are you wrapping up? But I cherish it still.
It's funny. I was just thinking about Deep Space Nine because it reached that point where it seemed like they'd done everything they could do and the show was sort of running out of gas. And then they pulled out of that nosedive and went into some of the best episodes of, the whole Trek franchise, those last few. It's like, wow.
Yes. And that's the trick of it. If you almost have to brace for the ride, that if you're going to take a bit of a dip, if you want to stretch out your show, not you generally.
Yeah.
If a creator wants to stretch their piece out into those later episodes, because they know you have to kind of, to really tell that story, you really have to go that far into the seasons. You kind of have to brace yourself that there might be a little bit of a dip. And if you've got a good enough story, I stayed loyal to Deep Space Nine. All the way through it, and I could feel a little bit of that dip, and there's other series that have done that, but I stayed loyal, and that's the trick of it. And knowing that it's kind of like riding out when you have low crop yields kind of thing.
Oh yeah, you have to get through the dry spell or whatever.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, it's one of those things, I think.
Well, I know you don't want to, one day hear people saying, "You remember that those episodes where January was doing this." I like that show up to that point where
I'm staying braced. I'm staying braced to hear that one. That wasn't my favorite. I'm like, okay, it's coming. It's coming. It's the neurotic writer creator kind of thing.
Yes. Well, for people who want to hear Ninth World Journal, how do they do it?
They can do it several ways. You can just subscribe through any of your podcatchers. If you just type in a Ninth World Journal, it'll come up on a search, or you can search through iTunes. You can search through Pocket Casts or Google Podcasts, Google Play Music, whatever it is now. You can actually also listen to the episodes on the website itself, which is ninthworldjournal.com, because I have them all posted there.
And it's not with the A. The website begins with the letter N, right? Ninth World Journal. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, the title is the only place where the A is, but in any links or social media or any addresses, it's just Ninth World Journal. The Twitter, I use the number 9 because their length thing, but the rest of it's spelled out.
You were so much smarter about this than I was. I chose one of the most common words in the English language. I mean, it's Googling for relativity. It's hopeless.
Oh my!
And there's even other podcasts, science podcasts called Relativity. It's like, oh, what exactly was I thinking? What, if anything, was I thinking? Ninth World Journal. That's a lot more specific. That's a lot more precise, and that will.
Yeah. Once you put the 3 of them together, then they kind of lead you down where they need to.
Well, I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening to this to do exactly that, to get in there and search for Ninth World Journal in that order. And you get to hear this magnificent voice of David's that I love so much, and telling an intriguing story, and I don't know where it's going.
Well, I'll just drop there's going to be a slight shift in just kind of the way the story is being told in season 2, and then season 3 we'll see what we're going to do. But so you might kind of have to brace for just some slight differences, but hopefully this story will still hold up.
It's like when TV series from when I was a kid, we had a season that was in black and white, and then you come back and this next season is in color.
Oh yeah. Gilligan's Island and Bewitched.
For example,
we went through one day at work and kind of figure out which all those shows were.
Yeah. Lost in Space. Yeah.
Lost in Space. Yeah.
God World.
Yeah, okay. I know, we're dating ourselves.
So on that note, I'll let you go. And
you're assuming it's my bedtime. That's right.
I was going to say it's later where I am. So yeah,
6:30.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm on the other side of the continent, and it is my bedtime. So Anyway, boy, it's been fantastic talking with you, David. I appreciate you.
Oh
doing
yeah, it's been a
so
joy.
much.
This is a fun conversation. Thanks for having me on.